retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. This is Conduit News, as you just heard, and it's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for listening to this program. Thank you so much for all of the feedback that you give us. The positive feedback. You know, it's mainly positive feedback, unless you are someone who wants to grow government at the Marble Palace. Hey, in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, we do have a lot of news to get to today. Governor Asa Hutchinson did hold a press conference yesterday about what he was going to do at Arkansas Works now that the judge has struck the work requirements. Now, I was pretty fired up about this yesterday because Arkansas can't afford Arkansas Works with the work requirements or without. What I should say is Arkansas can't afford Obamacare Medicaid expansion with the work requirements or without the work requirements. That is abundantly clear. I had to listen to this press conference with Asa yesterday where he's bragging that since we've instituted Arkansas Works, 12,000 people have now found a job. 12,000. This program had as many as 330,000 people on it at one time. The governor now claims there's only 235. He conveniently leaves out. He says that original estimates of this program said that there were going to be 250,000 people on the program, and now there's 235,000. So he's trying to take a victory lap. But he's not accurate. The original estimate was that there would only be 215,000 people. So by my count, 235 is still proving government estimates to be unreliable when it comes to saving taxpayer money. The telephone number is 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program today. And it is Johnny Cash Friday. Turn that music up, Joe. There we go. Johnny Cash Friday. Johnny Cash Friday Day, where we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day. And so we're going to listen to a lot of Johnny Cash music today, but we do have a lot of news to get to. We're going to start with President Donald Trump last night in Michigan. He said the Democrats better watch out. He eventually said this because they're deceiving the country with ridiculous BS. Of course, he used the full language. I think pretty soon the FCC is just going to have to be like, well, you know what? If the president says it, maybe you don't get dinged for playing it. We're not going to listen to that part. Here's President Donald Trump from his rally last night in Michigan. Listen to this.
Right here in America's heartland, you know that, right? With the hard-working patriots from the great state of Michigan.
I think he's going to win Michigan, Joe. I mean, he's going to do it this time. I think he really will.
By the way, we're bringing a lot of those car companies back. Remember I told you they're coming back?
What was that vote count in Michigan? I'm going to look it up.
They're coming back. They're coming back fast. This has been an incredible couple of weeks for America.
You want a preview of the 2020 elections? This is what it's going to be like, folks.
The economy is roaring. The ISIS caliphate is defeated 100%.
Here it is.
And after 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead. The collusion delusion is over. The special counsel completed its report and found no collusion and no obstruction.
I love how he says that. That's great.
I could have told you that 2.5 years ago very easily.
Okay, stop for a second. This collusion delusion he's talking about. There was a great article that Joe, I don't know if you have it. You don't have it. It's fine. There was this great article over at Breitbart earlier in the week. What date was this published on? I'm looking at it right now. It was Jerome Hudson and the Flashback. Shattered book. Okay, Shattered. Was that Clinton's book or something? Shattered book. Clinton campaign hatched Russian narrative 24 hours after Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Now that a summary letter of the Department of Justice Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation has concluded, that President Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign did not collude with the Kremlin. It's worth highlighting again how Hillary Clinton hatched a plan and personally placed blame for her election loss on Russia just 24 hours after her concession speech. The stunning revelation was reported by journalists Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes, who methodically detailed in their Clinton campaign tell-all, Shattered, inside Hillary Clinton's doomed campaign, how Clinton helped fan the flames of Russian collusion by blaming her election loss on the FBI investigation into her private emails and Russian interference. She wants to make sure all these narratives get spun the right way, a longtime Clinton confidant told Allen and Parnes. The pair detailed how Hillary Clinton's Russian blame game was spurred by her senior campaign staffers John Podesta and Robbie Mook, less than within 24 hours of, that's the book, quote, after she conceded to Trump. Here's a quote from the book. The strategy had been set within 24 hours of her concession speech. Mook and Podesta assembled her communications team at the Brooklyn headquarters to engineer the case that the election wasn't entirely on the up and up. For a couple of hours, with Shake Shack containers littering the room, they went over the script. They would pitch to the press and the public. Already, Russian hacking was the centerpiece of the argument. And here we are 2 years later. You people out there that don't want to believe there's a deep state, you people out there that don't want to believe that the media is easily manipulated, and is, in many cases, they're completely on the side of the Democrats. They're completely willing participants in some cases to actively deceive the American people. Well, then what is this? I mean, because they were obviously very effective. It seems like it's taken at least 2 years for President Trump to try to, to really just restore freedom, and to stop this. It's really, President Trump is attempting to make the United States government monolithic again. What do I mean by that? President Trump is attempting to make the government monolithic again, meaning having the same goals. We can agree on what the mission of the country is, trying to secure the people's rights, and that. But this idea where we have these factions of these lifelong bureaucrats or intelligence agencies who to me appear to be at war with the president or at war with one another, and President Trump is trying to put an end to that, and it's taken him 2 years to get to this. The fact that Robert Mueller did not do what the deep state wanted him to do is a huge sign that President Trump is winning. The fact that he did not, and I was prepared for President Trump to be indicted because I know the type of people he's trying to root out, the swamp he's actually attempting to drain. Let's keep going here, Joe.
Total exoneration, complete vindication. You know, it's interesting. Robert Mueller was a god to the Democrats, was a god to them until he said there was no collusion. They don't like him so much right now.
That's exactly right. Stop. Somebody just texted me and said, "What about the Arkansas deep state, Paul?" Okay, well, yeah, that's true. We I don't know if we have an Arkansas deep state. We definitely have an Arkansas establishment. We do have people who are in positions of power. We do have people who are in positions of power that I think are very familiar and fit right into the corrupt swamp in Washington, D.C., here in Arkansas. There's no question about that. But here's my hope, and maybe it's misplaced, and I wouldn't have said this 2 years ago, but President Trump is really making a lot of progress to the point where, just like the states are supposed to emulate the federal government when it comes to the concept of federalism, just like Reagan's sound economic policy, trickle-down economics, I am hoping as President Trump goes after these bad actors in government, who he is going to go after them. Make no mistake. You're hearing these people from Karl Rove, and others that are saying, you need to stop now. You need to stop. No, President Trump is right. There's merit to what he's saying, that this never needs to happen again to a president just because he's anti-status quo and he's not from Washington, D.C. And so these people he's going to go after them. He's going to prosecute them because they have committed crimes and they have abused their power. They have besmirched the rank and file members of the FBI, and they have got to be prosecuted, and he's going to do that. And my hope is that this attempt to get rid of the corruption in Washington, D.C. will trickle down, and eventually this corruption that we see in our own state will be rooted out as well. We've already seen some of it exposed, but it's a lot of it's still there. I mean, the fact that I'll leave it at that. Let's get back to the president last night in Michigan.
By the Democrat Party and the fake news media right back there.
Yeah, you'll have Joe's right. Right now we've had trickle-down corruption.
And the deep state.
Let's have trickle-down transparency now.
To overturn the results of the 2016 election have failed the greatest election that we've had in a long time, maybe right from the beginning. This was nothing more than a sinister effort to undermine our historic election victory and to sabotage the will of the American people. This is the one we want. We want ourselves. We want us. And that's what we got.
The will of the people. The will of the people.
We came from all over to vote. They've never taken it away from us. Never.
But they tried.
Our movement took on the political establishment, the corrupt media, and it's never been more corrupt than it is today. And many special interests. That's why they tried to do everything possible to take us out, but we're very tough to take out, aren't we? Very, very tough.
Stop. Yeah, what we have seen here, again, I mean, if you look at all of this over the last 2 years, President Trump has really handled this situation perfectly by not releasing the FISA, not declassifying it yet. They would have, it would have bolstered their bogus obstruction of justice arguments. Now he can release. I expect him to release. We interviewed Devin Nunes, interviewed Congressman Rick Crawford, Arkansas Rick Crawford. We expect him to release this at some point now. I mean, it has to be released because the American people have got to see the abuse of power that this really was. I have been saying for a while that as I watch things unfold at the national level, people are putting out nets. They continue to put out nets to trap the President of the United States. And they fall into their own nets. They lay traps for our president, and then they fall into them. And it happens constantly. It's like it's like there are these little mini nets that they keep falling into, but then there's also just like a big giant one that's down the road that they'll fall in. It's amazing to me. I've never seen anything like it, where the President of the United States just continues to win. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's exactly the way he campaigned. You're going to win so much you get tired of it. The president's detractors continue to fall into their own nets, these carefully planned traps that they put out there for him, and it blows up in their face every time. You ever say, I have to confess, I have seen the videos where the terrorists, are hanging out with each other, making bombs, and then they accidentally, have you seen it? I mean, there's several videos where terrorists will literally blow themselves up while they're planning, making a bomb for Western civilization, and then the entire room of terrorists are gone. And I've seen those videos. That's the way I'm reminded of all of the president's detractors. They just continue to and see, in the past, they never made mistakes. Whatever the press wanted, whatever narrative they crafted, that's what they were able to convince the American people was the facts, was the truth. And how many people still think that George Zimmerman is a white guy that killed Trayvon Martin because he was black? How many people out there still believe that? A lot of you do, because the Associated Press made up the term white Hispanic. How many of you still, how many people out there only ever listen to the edited NBC 911 tape where Trayvon Martin started following him, quote, because he was, George Zimmerman started following Trayvon, quote, because he was black, or he looks black. Well, that was an edited 911 tape. He was asked what color the guy was as he was calling 911. And now, I mean, anyway, the phone number, 870-275-9799. The media's blockade on the truth is being weakened every day. And this Robert Mueller situation, you can tell with the tanking of the ratings of MSNBC, the tanking of the ratings of CNN, it means that, yeah, there's probably some leftists out there disappointed who are in grief, mourning, but there's also people who are probably saying, oh my gosh, I can't trust this news network anymore. They've lied to me for 2 years. We're gonna take a break. Back in a minute. It's Johnny Cash Friday.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. Congressman Rick Crawford joins us again. Rick, it's always great to have you on, sir.
Hey, man, no Johnny Cash today?
Well, that was actually a Johnny Cash song. It just has a really long intro, but that's "I'll Be Home for Christmas" by Johnny Cash. But it took forever to get there.
Oh yeah. All right.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
It's okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the Farm Bill. What are your thoughts on the Farm Bill? I know it's we've got progress there, right?
We did, and I mean, there were some naysayers, that talked about, well, it's just more of the same. That's just not true. We didn't get everything we wanted on the nutrition title, but here's the upshot here that I think people need to understand. We still have control in the administration. So while we didn't achieve the statutory accomplishments we wanted to with regard to these work requirements, the Secretary has the authority to implement those anyway. And so he'll implement everything we were asking for legislatively. so then the argument is, well, then the next administration can come in and do it. Yes, that's true, but not without the pay-go requirement. And so when you see when they realize the benefits and savings that this brings to the federal budget, and then you've got the obstacle of pay-go to be able to compensate for that, this is a big win. This is big deficit reduction. And so I think people need to recognize that while we didn't accomplish the statutory changes, that we still have,
which were what? Basically limits on the food stamps, because the food stamps
right,
is like 80% of the bill, right?
Right. And so basically what we were trying to do was to codify reprogramming those dollars toward career and technical education. So basically requiring that if you're going to receive these benefits, if you're between the ages of 18 and 59, that you've got to be either working 20 hours a week or in an approved and funded CTE program, then that not only is that good for us from the standpoint of finite resources in the form of taxpayer dollars, but it's also good in helping improve people's personal economy and getting them an on-ramp, to success. And so I think this should be viewed as a win, even though we didn't accomplish that statutorily. The authority still exists for the Secretary to administer those programs, and he will begin to promulgate rules almost immediately to reflect what we were trying to accomplish in the House version.
Well, and I think
so,
that's good.
As I said, I think it's a win for us. And then as far as on the ag side, mostly the continuation of the previous policy. So continuity is always good. I mean, you can't do anything with certainty, but you can do some things with predictability. And when you've got Mother Nature as your business partner, you need all the predictability you can get. And so if you can help sort of predict these programs and maintain continuity, that is a significant accomplishment as well.
Well, and you got to know that the farmers out there were watching this.
All right, welcome back, Johnny Cash Friday. Joel Pollack, the Illinois Prosecutors Bar Association, has condemned the Cook County State Attorney Kim Fox for her handling of the Jussie Smollett case, calling her dismissal of the charges and public statements unethical and misleading. Quote, the events of the past few days regarding the Cook County State's Attorney's handling of the Jussie Smollett case is not condoned by the APBA, nor is it representative of the honest, ethical work prosecutors provide to the citizens of the state of Illinois on a daily basis. The manner in which this case was dismissed was abnormal and unfamiliar to those who practice law in criminal courthouses across the state. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges alike do not recognize the arrangement Mr. Smollett received. Even more problematic, the state's attorney and her representatives have fundamentally misled the public on the law and circumstances surrounding the dismissal. It goes on. The state's attorney kept the case within her office and thus never actually recused herself as a matter of law. Additionally, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office falsely informed the public that the uncontested sealing of the criminal court case was mandatory under Illinois law. The state's attorney not only declined to fight the sealing of this case in court, but then provided false information to the public regarding it. Lastly, the state's attorney has claimed this arrangement is available to all defendants and not a new or unusual practice. There has even been an implication it was done in accordance with a statutory diversion program. These statements are plainly misleading and inaccurate. I mean, everyone knows that the two most corrupt everyone knows that the most corrupt place conceptually is Cook County, Illinois. Also maybe Arkansas. But we will just say this. It is a positive sign in this day and age that even like Democrats, far leftists, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, and the rest of the attorneys, like, this is so blatantly ridiculous with Jussie Smollett that even Democrats are saying that this is wrong.
Just because, there is a little uncertainty out there with the tariffs and everything that's been going on internationally with China. And I think farmers are like, come on, we don't need any delay here. We don't need another thing to worry about. But what are your thoughts on the new developments with the 90-day halt to increases in tariffs with China?
I'm encouraged. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I understand, farmers, their patriotism is probably, they can only stand so much, when it starts to affect their bottom line. And so I applaud our farmers for, their understanding of what was trying to be accomplished here. There's some good news in that, we just got a deal on some soybeans. They're going to go out of the port in Seattle, the Northwest. And so I had somebody on Twitter, so how does that benefit Arkansas farmers? Well, I mean, clearly they don't understand how grain markets work. Grain is fungible commodity on the global market, in the global marketplace. So moving grain is good for everybody that grows grain. So while they're not necessarily buying Arkansas soybeans, they're buying and helping to relieve the pressure of backstocks that are depressing prices. So that's how it benefits Arkansas farmers. So I just wish people, when they comment on Twitter, they would comment with some basic understanding before they jump out there and say crazy things like that. But the reality is, I'm less concerned about what port the beans move from and more concerned about the fact that they're moving. And what that does is provide some support. And you can look and see what the markets have done. I think we're at somewhere around 920 for March beans right now. Maybe give or take 5 or 10 cents. That's a significant upturn. We don't know what the future holds, but I'm seeing more and more economic activity in China that shows that they are in a very precarious position, that they're having an inflation problem, they're declining growth, their retail sector is not enough activity to offset it. As I've said all along, their economy is not in a position to sustain these tariffs, and we're seeing the evidence of that now. Yes, it was a burden for us, and it continues to be. And I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of the end of this tariff posture that's going to open those markets back up. In the interim, what we've seen is U.S. farmers looking for opportunities to expand market access outside of the Chinese market. That's a big market to try and overcome and offset. But we're seeing some positive trends so that we don't have to have all our eggs in one basket. Yes, that's a big part of our export picture. But to the farmers' credit, and exporters, they're finding some inroads into other countries to improve our market picture without necessarily having to rely exclusively on China.
I mean, I'm encouraged as well. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. A lot of people, congressmen, thought that President Trump's approach here, because it really hasn't been done very often, was going to be disastrous. They say things like, well, trade is just too hard and everything else. But it appears, like you just said, China needs access to our market and their economy.
So if anybody's in the audience here to hear 571, the sponsor will not be here today. And we're going to start here just momentarily.
Done away with, I guess, they arrested that CFO from Huawei, which I thought was strange. There's a lot of things that could happen to upset the negotiations. But so far, it appears that President Trump's strategy is working.
Well, and that's really
all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Senate Bill 576.
Subscribing to, the established dogma of how trade deals work. He's results oriented, and if he has to shake things up to do it. Look, I'm not trying to be a Donald Trump apologist. But I'm just saying, when you call out a win for a win, okay? So I think we're on the brink of winning here with regard to how China conducts itself in the market.
That have made it not
for the United States, but for the rest of the world. Let's get real about what China's plans are. China's plans are to supplant the United States as the preeminent economy in the world. Ultimately, they would like to supplant the U.S. dollar as the
part of this economic development pact
for global transactions. They would like for their currency
most restrictive
to rise
states
to that level. And they know, and they're caught, they can't continue to operate the way they are and expect to achieve those goals. And so even in their own interest, they had to make some adjustments, because if they're to be held up to the standard that they think they should be held up to, it starts by playing by the rules. And they have not played by the rules for decades. They continue to flout the WTO rules. They continue to do their own thing, lie, cheat, steal, forced technology transfer,
this type of thing. So this has always been taxed. It's taxed at, the regular sales tax rates, both state and local municipalities. So then you come down to a total revenue generator.
They're going to have to change their ways, and that's all that President Trump is saying and doing to back that up. And so what that does is benefit U.S. producers, and I'm not talking about just ag producers. I'm talking about anybody that is in today's economy. You're a global player, whether you want to be or not. If you're producing a product or good for sale somewhere, you might as well understand that you are in the global marketplace, because you're either exporting your product or you're competing with products that are being brought into our market. In either case, you are participating in a competitive.
All right, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This interesting, we're going to kind of pick up here with some of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly from yesterday. What do you need to know? What happened yesterday? Well, we have ACE's press conference. We're going to get to that here in a minute about Arkansas Works being struck down by a federal judge. Okay, we have that. But we also have the internet sales tax, which cruised out of the Senate earlier in the week. Okay? And so it cruised out of the Senate earlier in the week. And now we have this internet sales tax in the House Revenue and Tax Committee. Now, in short, the bill failed yesterday, but this is what happened last session. No one can really agree on things. The reason the bill failed, from what I can tell yesterday, there was not one audible yes vote, and I think the committee really was moved by the testimony of a car wash owner. So there was a few car wash owners who were against this. Now, just like anything, I don't who knows why they were trying to tweak with the taxation of car washes and tax water, and they put this in an internet sales tax bill. But that appears to be this. Yesterday was the day where the car wash industry saved the Arkansas taxpayers for just a little bit longer. Right? Just a little bit longer, from what I can tell. So there are full-service car washes. I learned this yesterday. There are full-service car washes where you can, go through a tunnel and, get your car washed, but then, what, they can detail it, they can vacuum it for you, they can sell you other things, other products that aren't, that are taxed at a normal rate. And then there are just your typical tunnel automated car wash where you pull up, you don't interact with anybody. You just pull up and you go through the car wash. Okay. Those guys, according to them, the ones who are just owners of the automated car wash that don't do any kind of full service detail or anything like that, they're claiming that under this bill, again, the internet sales tax bill that has, that's tweaking the taxation of car washes, they're claiming that that they're getting a raw deal, and that the full-service car washes now are going to basically pay, as percentage of income, virtually no tax. That's at least what I got out of it. And that now, by taxing the water, which is really the only thing that just a normal automated car wash uses, that it's very, very unfair. Matter of fact, we have some of this. Here's a gentleman. I don't have his name, but he and his son own several car washes in Arkansas. Go ahead, Joe. This gentleman, he's in the middle of his testimony right now, right next to Dan Douglas. For some reason, Bart Hester didn't want to run this bill. Dan Douglas has returned. It was good to see Dan Douglas in his full internet sales tax advocacy. He talked about his at one point he talked about his swim trunks. I don't have that specific piece of audio, but at one point, you know what Dan Douglas said? Let me see if I can do the impression. He said, "If you'd have asked me what the internet was back in 1992, I'd have thought it was the mesh netting inside your swimsuit." That's what he said. I'm not kidding you. He actually said that yesterday, and I said, well, he's got to say something like that. I mean, he's Dan Douglas. What are you going to do? Anyway, here's the gentleman saying that this bill for the internet sales tax is really about car washes, and car washes are getting a raw deal. Listen to him.
Rated of $117 for the full service and $6 for the express tunnel. Now note that in this, the same amount of water will be used at both car washes. That's very important to note. You see my asterisk there, roughly 60 gallons. It can vary between car washes, between 40 and 60 gallons per car. So now, if you'll go to page 2, you'll see I've carried over the total revenue generated, $117 from the full service, $6 from the express tunnel. They both have used 60 gallons of water at this point. Now, the way that it's calculated, according to SB 576, just as Representative Douglas mentioned, you'll take 80%, and you see my single asterisk footnote. If you'll follow that down to the bottom of the page, if you would like, you'll see the calculation. On the 60 gallons of water, you take 80%, resulting in 48 gallons that would be subject to the water tax fee, and then you multiply by 0.004. Not real difficult. You come to 19 cents. Now, on a $117 ticket, the full-service car washes will pay 19 cents under this new law, or new bill, SB 576. The express tunnel car wash on the same will pay the same 19 cents on $6. We don't have any way of earning any more income. We're just an automated process. Now, if you take that as a percentage of revenue, the full services will pay 0 tax going forward as a percentage of revenue. Now, follow my footnote, asterisk 2. I've rounded to the whole number. They would actually pay as a percentage of revenue on this top wash, they would pay 0.0016. So it doesn't even calculate to a whole number on a percentage even. We would pay 3%. So if you just look at the difference in the fees that we would pay, the water usage fees, we would pay 1,900% more as a percentage of revenue. Now, if you're not a numbers person and that confuses you, no problems. Let me see if I can make that a little bit more clear. I think it's clear on the tax. I use the lowest dollar amount for the express tunnel.
This car wash owner is a CPA, by the way.
You would think the lower wash amount, the lower dollar amount would pay the less tax, right? Or at least pay somewhat lesser of a tax. But in this case, it pays the exact same tax, which turns out as a percentage of revenue to be 1,900% more, 1,900% more. Now, let's make it even easier to follow. All right, let's put this on an annualized basis. Let's assume a full service and express tunnel both are going to hit $1 million of revenue. Now, I use their top package and our bottom package to make that point, just to show you that it's upside down. You know, the lower dollar amount should produce a lower tax, and it doesn't. But the actual, to annualize it, you can't use, I mean, which package do you use? You know, do you use the top dollar package or the bottom package? Well, we in the car wash industry do something that's called average ticket price. What that is, you take all of your car washes for a period of time, a day, a month, a year, and you get the weighted average. All right, for the American Car Wash Association puts the weighted average of a full-service tunnel somewhere between $20 and $40. It varies. Then you can see the variation there, depending on how much do they promote their ancillary services? How much do they promote those non-water services? And so it can range anywhere 20 to 40. For the express tunnel, ours is a much tighter range. We only do the automated wash, so ours ranges between 8 and 10. So let's just take the average ticket price. You understand what that represents? Just the, you know, for a certain period of time, add up all of our customers, look at all the variety of packages they got, and it averages out to $30 per car, taking the middle amount for the full service, and $9 a car for the tunnel. Then if you do the simple math of the bill, SB 576, in order to get $1 million of revenue, the full-service industry would have to wash, it's on page 3, 33,333 cars, okay? That's at a $30 ticket average. That would come up to $1 million. The express tunnel would have to wash 111, sorry for the repeating number there, it's just a factor of the numbers here, to come up to the $1 million at a $9 ticket average. Now, let's do the math and see how much tax we would owe. The gallons of water is what this tax is going to come from, which on the face, prima facie, provides an advantage to a full-service tunnel that has many services they make money off that are non-water related. So the gallons of water used to wash those 33,000 cars for the full service at a $30 ticket average, that's factoring in their non-water item services, the ancillary services that are non-water related. They would spend about 2 million gallons. You see that there, second line. We would, on the other hand, spend 6.7 million gallons. Just do your formula. You take the 80% of the gallons is all that's subject to the tax. Then you apply the tax, and we would pay $21,333 on $1 million of revenue. They would pay $6,400. We would pay 333% more.
Yes. Okay.
On the same.
So, from what I can tell, this testimony alone is why the internet sales tax failed yesterday. That there was actually people there were actually sympathetic people in this on this House Revenue and Tax that are sympathetic to the plight of small business owners here in the state of Arkansas. Now, this is a direct contrast to the EITC tobacco vaping tax increase bill over in the Senate, Jim Hendren's bill, Jim Spendren. So Jim Spendren's bill, they had vaping owners coming up there to the committee pleading with them, this is going to really drastically affect our bill and, our business. We're going to have to fire employees. We may even have to shut our doors. Nothing. Absolutely nothing from that committee because they were told that this is the will of the nephew, the will of the nephews. Anyway, so we contrast that to what we just saw in the House committee. They decided to stall this bill, and so for whatever reason, here's the thing: you never know what you never actually know what argument some legislator is going to seize on, and it's going to make them change their mind. But the argument was the car wash yesterday, and the business owners. There was more than one car wash owner. There was one car wash guy who said, "Oh, we like this bill now," but that was weird. It was a little strange. But so all I would tell you is this: keep calling your legislators, especially on the Revenue and Tax Committee in the House, because if you are opposed to this bill, not because it has car washes in it, if you're opposed to this bill like I am because it's more money out of the people's pockets, if they put an internet sales tax on, everything's going to be more expensive on the internet, and that's even more revenue coming from you. If you do that, if you believe like I do, then keep calling your legislators, because we've got the weekend now, because they didn't run it last night after the committee met. So you've got more time. I'm saying you never know what argument. You never know if they might listen to you. They might listen to constituents and say, you know what, we don't need to pass this internet sales tax. Okay, so we're going to take a break right now, and then when we come back, I'm going to let you hear Mr. Josh Waters, who actually testified in this committee yesterday, and told them to vote against the internet sales tax for the reasons that I was just talking about. He did an excellent job back in a minute.
Marketplace. And for that to work and be fair, you've got to have the other participants playing by the rules. And that's all I think that Donald Trump was trying to establish, is that, by gosh, y'all are going to play by the rules, and we're going to see to it that you do.
We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford a little bit on trade here. Now, Congressman Rick Crawford, he is on the House Intelligence Committee, so he is privy to a lot of information. A lot of information I know he can't share with us. But yesterday, Congressman, there was an interesting development, I thought. An oversight panel on the Clinton Foundation met yesterday, a subcommittee. And they talked to two gentlemen who were finding...
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
Investigators who have submitted a probable cause claim to the IRS about massive problems with the Clinton Foundation. His name is John Moynihan and Larry Doyle. Now, Mark Meadows was pretty upset that they wouldn't turn over all of their documents because they're under the impression that they won't qualify for a reward with the IRS if the IRS accepts their claim. But some stark admissions, Congressman Crawford. We found out that they submitted to the IRS evidence of an ongoing FBI investigation out of Little Rock into the Clinton Foundation. A 747, which a lot of people said was some conspiracy. They referenced that in their testimony. A 747 landing in Little Rock, being loaded with documents and flown back. Pretty explosive stuff. I click off at the end of the testimony, and what do I see? I see the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal saying President Trump's inauguration is now being investigated, and I just thought, wow, we can't win for losing here. What's your reaction to all that's been going on?
Well, this is a classic redirect. The fact of the matter is the Clintons have been misbehaving for years, and I think, finally people are coming to the realization that something has to be done about it. But do you think that the media are going to say anything about it? No. They're going to do everything they can to insulate the Clintons from any kind of...
At the very beginning of the session.
That's been so long ago, man. I slept since then.
That's right. Josh Waters, attorney for political strategies. I represent Conduit for Action, and just opposed to one portion of this bill. That's the internet sales tax portion. Opposed last session. Opposed to the internet tax 2.0 that's in the bill this session. Simply put, this bill would grow government at all levels, and the people are taxed enough already. The Internet Tax 2.0 in this bill would grow the size and scope of government at the state, county, and city level. It would provide more revenue for states, cities, and counties, even while some are seeing record sales tax revenues. This further supports the thought that we do, in fact, have a spending problem and not a revenue problem in this state. Recently, tax increase votes were held in Northwest Arkansas, in Northeast Arkansas, and in the River Valley. 3 of those were voted down and failed 65 to 75%. The people spoke clearly. We are taxed enough already. I strongly believe that most people in the state believe government has plenty of money as is and wants their government to better prioritize the spending before raising taxes. So my second point, the people of Arkansas will pay this tax, and I don't believe it will save brick and mortar stores and retailers. I also wanted to note we do have the 3rd highest sales tax already in the country. So this is additional revenue and additional burden on the people. So a main argument for passing this tax increase is to somehow save brick and mortar stores in our communities. Nothing in this bill is going to bring back Sears, Toys R Us, or Hastings. The free market has provided a cheaper, more convenient way for people to shop online. That will continue. The only thing this bill does is give government more money and the people less money. Nothing about that is somehow going to stop the rise of online shopping. Under that same logic of tax increases to save the brick and mortar stores, we will next be passing taxes on every episode of a Netflix show in order to bring back Blockbuster video stores. It will be described as economic development and to create jobs. Times are changing. People enjoy the convenience of purchasing online. That will continue, but the Internet Tax 2.0 will just mean they have less money to buy with. I wanted to talk a little bit about the numbers, and I believe the numbers are important because the numbers reflect money out of the pockets of the people of Arkansas. That's what the numbers reflect, and I wanted to highlight that. Even with the low estimates, and I'll get to that in a minute, in this bill, this is a net tax increase until at least
fiscal year 2023. I heard from Representative Douglas it was $30 million decrease by 2028. So that's even using the low estimates that I think are in this bill. It's a net tax increase. The internet tax comes in under an emergency clause, which I'll get to in a second, starting July 1, and the rest of these tax cuts are phased in over time down the road. And also, too, I know the accommodations intermediaries was added in with the amendment, so I don't know what the fiscal impact is on that. I know it was voted down in this committee last session, so I assume there's some significant fiscal impact with that additional revenue. So these are just numbers based before that. I would note this bill deviates from legislation that was proposed and passed in South Dakota, and that the U.S. Supreme Court did uphold that in the Wayfair decision. But it is not. This bill is not the same as that. This Internet Tax 2.0 would include third-party marketplace sellers, and thus include third-party purchases made on the facilitators' websites. Marketplace facilitators are not in the South Dakota bill. I have a copy of that bill here if anyone wants to take a look. I attended the meetings of the Tax Task Force over the past year and a half and paid attention closely. Under draft legislation from the Tax Task Force at the end of last year, no language about marketplace facilitators was included in JLL 071. There was a revenue impact statement that was issued for that, though, without the marketplace facilitator language. That fiscal impact statement is almost identical to what this fiscal impact statement says. That includes marketplace facilitators. If we're adding in and capturing even more sales from these third-party purchases, but we're going to say the revenue stays the same, I don't know how you can make that argument. That'd be like saying, well, I'm going to, have, 20% more in sales, but no more in revenue at your business. It doesn't make sense. So the revenue impact without the facilitator language, very similar, the $35.3 million to the state and $11.8 million to cities and counties. In the Senate Rev and Tax Committee last week, I heard that it was estimated about 80% may come from these marketplace sellers, defined as facilitators in the bill. So if you just take that, the fiscal impact was $47.2 million total without the facilitator language. If that's 80% of the impact, you extrapolate that out, that's $235 million. I think that's probably too much. I think it's probably closer to the estimates we heard last session of $100 to $150 million. That was not an estimate from DFNA. That was from the bill sponsors. Further undercutting the low fiscal impact is the cities and counties portion. The city of Little Rock actually in 2017, after Amazon started voluntarily collecting and after this session, the city of Little Rock estimated based on actual sales and percentage of e-commerce that they would stand to gain $10.3 million. And now we're saying $11.8 million for all cities and counties, and online sales has only gone up since then. They made an additional estimate in 2018. I have copies of those, and they said $10.1 million. So if the city of Little Rock is $10 million by themselves, the 11.8 number is way under the estimate that I think we would see. I think there's strong arguments to say this bill will not be revenue neutral with the continued spike in online commerce until maybe the net operating loss is fully phased in. And we're supportive of that, the net operating loss, the corporate income tax cuts. We're just opposing the internet sales tax portion of this. As I mentioned, this bill goes further than the South Dakota law. I would also mention in South Dakota's bill and kind of the reasoning and the legitimate government interest that they put and argued in front of the Supreme Court was South Dakota doesn't have a corporate income tax or individual income tax, and their sales tax rate is lower than Arkansas. So we're in a very different position from them as well.
Pause. We will get back with Mr. Josh Waters' testimony, throwing numbers at him. If you see the people in the background there listening to the numbers, they're like, he got us. You can kind of tell back there. Some people from the government are like, Randy Zook from the Chamber of Commerce, he's right. We're trying to say that it's only $47 million in revenue when it's closer to $200 million. Yeah, $47 million. They are passing an internet sales tax bill with brand new language in it, and they're using an old DFNA financial impact statement. That's not accurate at all, because they don't want to admit that they're taking close to 150 to 200 million more dollars from you. They want to say, well, it's only 47 million, because they're cooking the books, because they know that they're taxing the people more.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Public opinion adjudication, if you will. So here's the thing. Like I said, it's been going on for years, and the problem with the media is that they have been so fully invested in first, with the Clintons and the Obamas and, so on, that they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. And so rather than just say, look, we messed up. We gave them too much credit for being people of character. We gave them too much credit for being, forthright and above board. No, because they've been so fully invested in it that they can't admit or won't admit that they were wrong. And look, I'm going to tell you, if they would just come clean and say, look, yep, we blew that call, but now we've got to start covering it honestly, maybe we'd get some coverage on this from the mainstream media. But it's not happening. And so, you're not going to see, the average Joe on the street doesn't have a clue that Secretary Clinton was running a pay-to-play scheme as Secretary of State. But the evidence suggests that she was. And the Clinton Foundation, the revenue that they generated during her years as Secretary of State indicate that she was running that kind of a game. And then you can see now how their donations have tailed off, just more than just considerably, almost to nothing by comparison. And so these people have information that they're trying to get out. They're being threatened to some degree. I mean, so it's a classic cover-up, and there are still some Clinton acolytes within the federal government that are doing everything they can to also derail, redirect, whatever they can do to try and take attention away from this. But this is going on.
Yeah, and not to mention, there's a lot of people that have a lot to lose here. It was some of the testimony from these financial investigators. They basically said, look, they were not operating under the rules of a nonprofit the way you're supposed to, which would mean if the IRS does actually investigate this, they're going to find that the people who have given the Clintons millions and millions of dollars, they got to write that off as a tax-deductible donation. And all of a sudden now all of their donors are going to owe money to the IRS. Mm-hmm. I mean, so there's it's a lot bigger than just the Clintons.
Well, it is. I mean, and so anytime you involve the IRS, they can delve into cracks and crevices that you would rather keep covered up, I'm sure, and they can do it with a microscope and make it very uncomfortable for people. And so there's going to be a whole lot of folks that are kind of going, we had no idea. But at some point in time, people are going to be held to account, and when they're held to account, that's when you're going to start hearing them complain about how this foundation was run, and when you might start to see a little bit more coverage of it when you reach a critical mass of big donors asking the question, how come we were told one thing and it turns out it's another, and now we're going to have to we've got a tax liability that we didn't anticipate, and some fairly significant.
One last question. I know we got to go. James Comey testimony behind closed doors that was released, and we found out, I guess, that former director of the FBI didn't remember a whole lot of what happened when he was the director.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and I go back a long way on this issue, and we talked about this back in when he came out and made the announcement about the Hillary campaign. He made the statement that in this environment, no prosecutor would bring charges against Hillary. Well, I told you then I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've done that, and I can see now that, I reserved judgment at that point in time. That's been over 2 years ago, I guess now. I reserved judgment, and since I've been on the Intelligence Committee, I've seen him for what he really is. And he has got a serious problem. And I don't know what his game is, but I can tell you what it's not. It's not about the truth. This guy has lied. He's lied to us in front of our committee. He's lied to the American people, and he's continuing to do it. This is not the Boy Scout that he purported to be, and he's got some serious problems. I don't know what his long game is, but I can tell you right now he is completely compromised and conflicted, and I have no regard for him.
Wow. That is, you heard it there, folks, from Congressman Rick Crawford. Congressman, appreciate you coming on. Merry Christmas to you, sir, and your family.
Same to you. Merry Christmas.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
The Arkansas head of the Chamber of Commerce, his name is Randy Zook, and we've been going over this video of Josh Waters testifying before the House Revenue and Tax Committee against the Internet Sales Tax Bill 2.0. And you can see Randy Zook and some of these government flunkies back there. Josh Waters did an excellent job yesterday of telling them that their financial impact statement is wrong. Of course, it doesn't matter because the establishment wants it. You let a conservative. Matter of fact, in that very committee meeting, Robin Lundstrom had a had a bill that would have helped out taxpayers. If you were delinquent on a tax, you'd have to. They wanted to send you a certified letter so you absolutely know, or a registered mail letter so they know that you received it, instead of mail not getting to you and then you realize you have a much bigger problem down the road. They voted that bill down because there wasn't a financial impact statement for the most part. Well, DFNA hasn't done a financial impact statement, but this is going to cost us, $1 million or whatever it was going to cost. I don't know. And they're like, nope, sorry. So they kill that bill. Here's a bill to take a bunch of money from the people, the internet sales tax bill, and then they essentially are using a phony and fraudulent document representing what revenue it's going to generate. These people do not care. They just get their orders from on high. And they go for it. And what's interesting is the reason this bill failed yesterday in committee is not because, as much as I love him, it's not because of the sound arguments that Josh Waters made. It's because they put a they put a water tax on car washes in this bill, and the car wash guy made such a good argument about what it was going to do to his business that the committee was actually sympathetic to what it was going to do to his business, and so they're trying to strip that language out. And I don't think Bart Hester's. I've just heard reports, Bart Hester, the sponsor of this bill, I think he likes the bill as it is. Obviously he does. He brought it to the committee. I don't think he wants to take any language out of there. And what was really funny is after the car wash guy gets through, Randy Zook, Chamber of Commerce guy that says that kids shouldn't be helping their parents. Can you play this? We have this, Joe, in the VLC player. This is Randy Zook is famous because he once said this when he was on a Common Core task force. Listen,
because I've been up here in the legislature when folks were rattling around and screaming bloody murder, and I can't help my kid with their homework. Well, they shouldn't be helping their kid with the homework in the first place. That's the teacher's job.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
What a radical position. But that's the Chamber of Commerce President Randy Zook. That's the teacher's job. That's his opinion on parents shouldn't be helping their kids with their homework in the first place. What are you talking about? It's homework. Teacher's not even there. That's the first thing. Anyway, it's a very elitist mentality. What was that? What? Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, somebody just slipped a note. Okay, that was weird. Somebody slips a note in the door. I hear something like, "What was that?" That was creepy. Okay, so Randy Zook gets asked about this car wash guy, like, "Hey, can you speak to that?" And Randy Zook's response is, well, that guy's not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, so we don't know anything about that because he's not a member. I thought that was fantastic. Here's more. Yesterday in the committee where the Internet Sales Tax Bill 2.0 has stalled. So call your representatives. All right, you still have time. This is the House Rev and Tax Committee. You never know what argument might sway them, so keep trying, folks. Tell them that you don't want more money taken out of your pocket. They've got enough of your money already. Here's more from Josh Waters. He's already exposed how their financial impact statement is a phony, and he went on.
Optional. There was nowhere in the Supreme Court decision, which was a 5-4 decision, there's nowhere in the Supreme Court decision says, yes, you have to pass the internet sales tax. It's very similar to the Obamacare Medicaid expansion program. Nothing said you have to pass it. It's optional to the states. So this is optional. Like I mentioned, I think the people of Arkansas are taxed enough already. The Tax Task Force issued a report, and in that report I wanted to quote, it says, any revenues collected as a result of this proposal should be dedicated to reducing taxes. And that's page 5 of the final report. And I read before the session even started, this money was in the budget and spent. So I don't see how you can come back later and say, well, we're going to reduce taxes. I think the only way you do that is whatever money does come in.
It's because we ignore the recommendations of the tax force.
Automatic triggers that say we're going to cut the sales tax rate by however much, if 50 million comes in, if 30 million, 100 million, automatic triggers to reduce the sales tax rate. I think that's the only way you do it without this. Well, we'll cut here and raise here, redistribute, and then hopefully it comes out to revenue neutral. I wanted to mention this is opposed by Republican committees around the state. To date, I've been told Washington County, Johnson County, Faulkner County, Randolph County Republican committees have opposed this. I know in the past, Benton County passed a resolution opposing a form of an internet sales tax. And I'm wrapping up here. Just wanted to point out on page 33, line 33, it says there's an emergency. This is not an emergency, and the public's peace, health, and safety is not in jeopardy if they don't start paying more money on July 1st.
That's what the emergency clause says, not boilerplate.
That's ridiculous to say. That's like saying people are going to riot in the street or fall over dead if they don't pay more in tax money, and so we're going to put an emergency clause on it. I just think that's ridiculous. Like I said, I think the corporate tax reform is good, and all the benefits that were described previously I believe we would still achieve those without the internet sales tax portion of this bill. So in closing, Internet Tax 2.0 in this legislation is simple. A vote for this bill as is a vote for growing government at all levels and taking more money from the people of Arkansas and growing the government coffers. Any future tax relief for corporations is good, but for the vast majority of Arkansans, this bill simply means less money in their pockets. And Mr. Chairman and Committee, I would respectfully, I think it's important for the people of Arkansas to know how their representatives vote on important pieces of legislation. So I would respectfully, whoever decides to bring it up, ask for a roll call on this vote. I think it's important for people to know how their legislature voted for them on this important issue, and I appreciate the time.
You're a brave man, you know that? So noted. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions?
So stop for there. Now, we're going to keep going here in a minute. That's State Representative Joe Jett, the chair of the committee. If you'll remember, he got kind of upset 2 years ago when Josh asked for a roll call vote. Now, see, that was when it was in real doubt whether or not this internet sales tax was going to pass, and it was like the fourth time they were running the bill, and it was in real doubt. And so, and matter of fact, they didn't have the votes, but they did have and so Joe Jett, if you go back to that audio, he passes the bill out of committee with a voice vote, but then there is a roll call, and they don't have the votes, which was the exact thing that Josh Waters was trying to say. And Joe Jett took offense. Are you questioning my integrity? This time, I think things have. I think things are a lot smoother now, and there is at least a mutual respect. So, but he is a brave man, and at this point, his middle name, Josh Waters' name, is now forever Josh Roll Call Waters. I mean, that's just the. I mean, it is. What a great name, though. Like Roll Call, like. That's a pretty good nickname to be known for. All right, so I would be doing you a disservice. I would be doing you a disservice if we didn't continue and listen to Dan Douglas close for his bill. So Dan Douglas is for more money coming out of the pockets. He's for fairness. If you'd have asked me what the internet was back in 1992, I'd have said it was the mesh in your the netting mesh in your swim trunks. He actually says this, by the way. Let's listen. We may have to forward this a little bit, Joe, to get the right timestamp. But go ahead, just hit play. Sure. Let's see where we're at.
Randy Land, you up?
All right, so forward out. We need to get to the end, Joe. Go ahead and stop and go and find me Dan Douglas's closing remarks, if you can do that for me real quick. Folks, in other news, the Governor Asa Hutchinson urges to fight for the work requirement. He's not going to give up on the Medicaid rule. He's going to urge the Trump administration. He claims the Trump administration is going to appeal or is for the work requirement. Listen, we can't afford Arkansas Works Medicaid expansion with a work requirement because, I mean, that's obvious. That's a self-evident truth. You can't argue with it. We can't afford it as it is now. We certainly can't afford it with no work requirement. So the governor is here doubling down. He is saying basically he wants to be right, and he wants to continue the program, but he wants to keep the Arkansas Works. Look, the bottom line is this. We can't afford it either way, but now that the portal's closed, now that everybody can reapply, just so you know, everybody can reapply now. If you've lost coverage, just go reapply because there's nothing they can do. And you don't have to report your work or your exemptions or any of that now. It's just free range. It's just like it was. I'm sure people from other states can get on it too. So if there and you know, the governor bragged yesterday. He was like, there's been 12,000 people since Arkansas Works work requirements. 12,000 people have found jobs. 12,000? That's it? Oh, great. A $2 billion program. We're spending $2 billion to for 12,000 people to find a job. That's ridiculous. Here's State Representative Dan Douglas closing for his internet sales tax bill that failed yesterday in House committee.
To everybody so intently. Wanted to address just a couple of things here, points that were brought out. First, on the car wash deal, this was new, rather late added. There was not a lot of information available to do research on how to do it. We can always come back and amend or change this in the fiscal session if give us time to research new ways to do it or more equitable ways. We have reduced already the cost by half where it was in the original bill, so we have worked with them considerably. As far as the internet sales tax goes, and that's a big point of contention in some of the testifiers, you know, there are 45 states that collect sales tax in the nation. There are 5 that don't collect sales tax. 39 states have already passed legislation to allow them to require online retailers to collect and remit sales tax. 39 out of 45. Others have bills in the works. If we do not pass this, we will be the only state in the nation that does not require these online retailers to collect and remit sales tax. Again, it's not a new tax.
Yeah, it's
and coming from a
gonna feel like one
on the quorum courts. Our cities and our counties live and die by their sales tax collections. Let me tell you, if the sales tax does not grow,
this is what I want you to hear right here. Listen to this.
If more shopping goes online and the sales tax is not collected, and that sales tax does not grow at the rate of inflation or the rate of the needs of the city or the county, what will they do? They'll either cut services or they'll raise millages.
Stop. So
we have to fund.
Dan Douglas, say what you want. He will always present for the most part, there may be some exceptions. I'm sure there are, just like everybody. Anyone who's got standards is a hypocrite at some point. But he will tell you why the bill is really necessary. Like, well, what's the goal of the bill? It's not to save small businesses. Now, he may say that here, but I want you to understand this is the real reason why everybody wants an internet sales tax. So that government gets more money. Period. That's it. There is no. So we have an example of Dan Douglas, which he didn't mention this when he was opening for his bill, but he's mentioned it in the closing. What's it really about? More money to government, more money to cities, more money to county, more money to the state. That's what they want. It has nothing to do with saving Main Street businesses, because if you're a Main Street business and you're being hurt right now by internet sales, guess what? That trend is going to continue, and there's nothing about taxing people on the internet that's going to stop it. It's just not going to stop. You need to open up an online business if you got a brick and mortar store. I'm going to tell you that right now. In all probability, it's what you need to do. So anyway, listen to State Representative Dan Douglas. Let's keep going here, real quick.
And things in spite of where we collect the money. Okay. In 1992, there was $600 million worth of mostly catalog sales tax collected. 1992, we didn't know what the internet was. If you asked me what the internet was in 1992, I said, well, is that net underwear inside men's swim trunks? Is that what you're talking about? I don't know what the internet was.
Dan Douglas, but everybody. We're going to take a break.
It's growing.
Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome hour number 2. Thank you so much for being with us today. The phone number 870-275-9799, broadcasting across Arkansas on terrific stations. We really appreciate everybody who's out there listening, but we're also broadcasting on our YouTube channel. Go to Conduit News, subscribe, and click the bell to receive notifications, as well as over at Facebook.com/Conduit News. We are in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. There was a bill that passed out of committee yesterday. This bill would increase the threshold for buying a used vehicle, the price of a used vehicle, and not having to pay the tax, sales tax on a used vehicle. Meaning right now it's lower than one sponsor, State Representative John Payton, would want it to be. So this would be a big, huge tax relief for the people out there shopping for used vehicles. The sponsor, State Representative John Payton, joins me on the phone now. John, good morning to you.
Good morning. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I know we've had you on to talk about the idea behind this legislation before. It's good to see this bill getting some movement and getting out of committee yesterday.
Yeah, it is. I really appreciate you having me on this morning. So we did advance it in committee. It'll be on the House floor. We have 82 House co-sponsors, so we should have plenty of votes to get it to the House, and then they'll head over to the Senate. And of course, it's bringing relief. The biggest obstacle we faced is this is not a revenue neutral bill. It actually has a cost. It's going to cut revenue by $12 million. And so, they're asking me, how we're going to pay for it, which is a lot of people's, favorite phrase on cutting taxes. But revenue growth has been robust. From 17 to 18, it was $168 million revenue growth. And over the last 8 years, it's averaged over $100 million a year. So I'm telling them that we're going to pay for it out of revenue growth. And so that's the biggest hurdle we face. And we need people contacting their senators, because it just, we tax used cars over and over and over again. And this stops when they reach a value below $7,500. But for the most part, that means that the car's already been taxed 3 or 4 times,
Mm-hmm. So your bill would raise the threshold from where to where?
So currently, when a vehicle reaches a value below $4,000, then we don't tax it. This would raise that to $7,500. So the FNA's estimated revenue impact is $12 million.
You know, State Representative Payton, this entire session, I feel like, has been, I guess, one of the default positions of some is that there is absolutely no way to absorb a tax cut without raising a tax somewhere else.
I really don't know how we fell into that mindset, but that's the truth. I mean, I got elected in 2013, and since I've been there, we've cut on the cutting side $500 million plus, and still our revenue growth is $500 million more in 18 than it was in 13. So, you know, I don't think we have a revenue problem. I think we have a priority problem. But, you know, for those Arkansans that drive inexpensive vehicles, and of course, you know, there are people that buy new vehicles, but everybody drives a used one. And for those that are on a tight budget, when you go to buy a vehicle, you have to make a down payment. You have to get your insurance in effect, which costs money. Then 30 days down the road, you've got your first payment due. And so when it comes to registering and paying that sales tax, that's another $400 or $500 out of your pocket when you're buying a $7,000 vehicle. And I think once we've taxed that automobile 3 or 4 or 5 times or more, you know, it's time to let it go and quit trying to collect the tax. After all, we collect property tax every year anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right. That's another whole thing.
On the same automobile. So, you know, you're taxed when you earn the money, you're taxed when you spend the money, and you're taxed on everything you bought with it every year.
Unbelievable. Have you gotten any pushback at all? And I think you might if people get desperate. But I know you've disclosed this. You are, as a profession, in the car business, and I know you've disclosed that. You get any pushback on that?
Yeah. No, I didn't. And of course, I kind of got a few surprised looks in committee because I'm one of only 2 members in the House that does not pay sales tax on used cars. And so the jaw dropped, and I'm like, because I'm a used car dealer, you know, I don't pay the tax. You know, I can put a dealer tag on and drive the automobile.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. You can watch the program live over at facebook.com/Conduit News, or you can go on the YouTube channel. Hey, if you go over to the YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the little bell to receive notifications as well. That would really help us out, and you'd get the smaller videos as well that get uploaded daily to the Conduit News YouTube page. Coming up here at 7:33, we'll be talking with Senator Scott Flippo. We'll be calling in, so we've got that for you here coming up. So you definitely want to stick around for that. I want to ask him a couple of things. The first thing, the resolution on gun rights, the constitutional carry that he carried, was passed this week. That's one giant positive thing that happened this week. The Patriots Act 746 have been working on this, telling everybody that we're a constitutional carry state. And now we have a House resolution and a Senate resolution. I asked him about that and just kind of get his take on the session and things that are going on right now. Also, let's see what else we have. In the next half hour as well, we do want to listen to some of Governor Asa Hutchinson's press conference from yesterday on Arkansas Works. Of course, a federal judge striking down Arkansas Works. Now, I think I was talking to somebody yesterday, and it was pretty much common knowledge. You know, I was saying what a coincidence that an hour before a federal judge strikes the work requirements, that the Arkansas Senate rams through the appropriation for Arkansas Works. An hour before it happens. Now, in my opinion, I think that the ruling was leaked. I think somehow there was the ruling, you know, somebody leaked the ruling before it came out. That's what I think. I mean, why else would you do that, you know? And you know, that's a whole nother can of worms. But I refuse to believe it was a coincidence that an hour before a federal judge strikes down Asa Hutchinson's key statewide achievement, according to him, that they rammed through the appropriation an hour before. that's a coincidence that I can't buy. The telephone number 870-275-9799. If you want to call or text, don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Registering and paying a tax on it. So, I understand that people may think that it's because I'm a car dealer. Well, it's because I'm very familiar with those situations where people are trying to buy transportation. They need dependable transportation in order to get a job in Arkansas. It's a rural state. You really can't catch a bus or walk to work in most places. You need transportation. And if we're going to have dependable employees, they need a dependable ride to work. And so, I've seen those situations where it's so hard on people's budget to try to, shake loose enough cash to make the down payment, get the insurance, and then the sales tax hits them 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road because they have 30 days to pay the sales tax. Well, then the first payment rolls around, and they've just, for the last 30 days, they've had all of their cash, sucked out of their pocket. And it makes it very hard on struggling families.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up at the end there, struggling families. This is a pro-family piece of legislation because this is enabling, this is for your working families out there who do live paycheck to paycheck. This is a huge, huge thing if this were to go into law.
I think that's absolutely who's going to benefit the most. Now, I'm not usually for carving out segments of the population to get benefits. So, it's available to anybody that wants to buy the vehicle. They don't have to be a struggling family. And as you know, there are some very successful people that choose to drive less expensive vehicles and maybe buying it for a child that's going off to college or buying it. I've had several people come in to buy vehicles for their employees that needed a ride. So, anybody can take advantage of it, but I do think it helps the struggling families.
Let me ask you this.
More than anything.
Let me ask you this. As a car dealer and a legislator, why aren't we taxing cars twice at all? Why not pay sales tax the first time you buy a car new?
Well, and it's a long story it goes back beyond 1991, but 91 is when Bill Clinton's administration passed the tax that was for all used cars. But what had happened is we had taxed new vehicles and not used ones for many years. And the theory was, we only need to collect tax once. Well, they realized out-of-state vehicles coming into Arkansas, we didn't get the once. And so what they would do is if it came into Arkansas on an out-of-state title, they would collect sales tax one time. And so used vehicles that had an Arkansas title would not be collected. And if they had an out-of-state title, they got collected that one time. Well, the state of Arkansas was sued, and that was an import tax, which is unconstitutional. And so when the state of Arkansas lost that lawsuit, Bill Clinton's answer was, we'll tax all used cars every time.
And here we are. Here we are now. Okay. Well, I appreciate that there's an exemption at all. Again, right now below 4,000, but this would take it 7,500 and below, right? Again.
That's correct.
Wow.
And the exemption had, several years back, we got the exemption passed at 2,500. And then about 5 or 6 years, I guess it's about 8 years ago, maybe, we raised it to 4,000.
This song about prisoners
vehicles
is
increasing.
We're not talking about any, Arkansas politicians that have been. That's not the intent. Take it however you want. Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. Happy Friday to Scott Flippo. Senator Scott Flippo is on the program. Scott, how are you, sir?
Paul, I'm well. Thank you very much, and good morning to you and your listeners.
Yes.
To be with you this morning.
Glad that you're with us. Remind the statewide audience, District 17 is where?
District 17, North Central Arkansas, and that covers the majority of Baxter, Marion, and Boone County.
There we go. That's a big district.
So in my opinion,
and one of my favorite parts of the state. One of my favorite parts of the state as well. So
absolutely.
So, Scott, I want to talk about this amazing gun resolution, but before we do that, I do want to ask you about your vote, for the internet sales tax bill that came up this week. I know. I got to go there. Tell us about it.
Okay, so first of all, it's not the internet sales tax. It's the e-fairness bill, Paul. If you're going to call it something, get the name right. It's the e-fairness.
Well,
e-fairness bill.
Okay, so e-fairness.
Okay,
so tell us about it. It is a bill that's got a lot of stuff packed into it.
Down here in Little Rock, it's always about fairness.
Yeah.
So the internet sales tax. So that was a difficult vote to make. Ideally, I like to see tax cuts on their own, because there was a corporate income tax that was wrapped in there with it.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that we do here in Little Rock is, they'll take an increase somewhere and they'll lump it in with a tax cut, and which makes it difficult to vote against. Obviously, the Supreme Court ruled last year that states could collect, the sales tax on online purchases. I believe it was at $10,000 or more a year for a business. I want to say that was it, Paul.
I think you're right. Something in there.
That sounds right. And here's the thing. The messaging and the strategy behind this was, it's all about e-fairness. But what I think a lot of people fail to realize is that, this is not going to save Main Street business in and of itself. People's shopping habits are changing. The way they purchase things are changing. I'm 39 years old. A lot of people my age and younger, they'll shop online for the convenience factor. So is this going to be the silver bullet that's going to save, small Main Street business? I don't think it will be.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly that's one of the messaging parts behind it. But I just personally, I would like to see that we're going to vote on things on their own and not lump it in together to try to make it easier.
But you would say down here, you would say the corporate tax provisions are kind of what got your yes vote?
Oh, absolutely. That's a difficult thing to vote against. I mean, Arkansas needs to be more competitive with our corporate tax rate. But again, we're going to lump that in with something else, which always makes it difficult. I want to say that measure got 27 votes in the Senate, 27-28. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think that it did get 27. Yeah.
I let him go past my name the first time. I put my thumb at the end. A difficult vote, but I made it, and I'm going to stand by it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I don't want, we're at a point now, and just kind of address this if you don't mind. My fear is after this session is over, there's a lot of money that's going to be coming from the people to the government than before you guys met. Are you worried at all about that?
Yeah. I think that's a true statement, Paul. I don't think it. I know it.
You know it. So, that's what's so frustrating here. And we have this situation where Arkansas Works yesterday, the work requirements, struck down by a federal judge. Now, let me ask you this, Scott, because do you think it was a coincidence that, and now you didn't vote for the funding on that yesterday.
No, I didn't.
And that's a great vote. And you're being very consistent there in your opposition to it. But do you think that it was a coincidence that you guys pushed the funding for Arkansas Works through like an hour and a half before the judge comes down with his ruling?
Yes. It is not a coincidence. I do not believe in coincidences in politics. And so that was, well calculated on our part down here. And I don't think it was even an hour and a half. I think it was about 30 minutes before the judge came down with his ruling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
I mean, I think before we got out of session yesterday, Paul, or the day before yesterday, I saw online where the judge had overturned their work requirements.
Yeah, and I know
so there was a mad rush to get that. Of course, it would have been difficult for them to extend or pass the appropriations for Arkansas Works last year without those work requirements.
Mm-hmm.
But with any government program, Paul, and you and your listeners are probably aware of this, once you expand or create a new social program, it's almost always impossible to do away with it. And Arkansas Works, private option, is no different.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And my concern is, Scott, I don't think we can afford, I know we can't afford Obamacare Medicaid expansion without the work requirements. I don't think we can afford it with the work requirements personally.
No, I didn't vote for it with the work requirements. I think what would have tipped the scales for me had we gone along and the feds approved the waiver to allow us to, reduce eligibility from 130% to 100% of federal poverty line. That would have really reined it in, and I think made it more manageable, more so than just the work requirements on their own. As I understood it, the feds were not really open. The Trump administration was not really open to that for fear that a lot of states that didn't expand Medicaid would want to come on board and expand it under those conditions.
Yep.
But either way, it's just a boondoggle. I was telling somebody last night. The good news is at least we have this free wraparound dental coverage for people on Arkansas Works to encourage them to be good stewards of their already free insurance.
I'm forgetting about the wraparound coverage. Yeah, okay. About to say, I thought you were being sarcastic there. Yeah, because that's not good news.
No,
we're talking with.
It's ridiculous. We're giving people free wraparound dental coverage to be a good steward of their already free insurance. Think about that.
Yeah, and it's
I don't even have dental insurance.
Hey, State Representative Josh Miller actually has a bill. I think it's House Bill 1929
to move it all to Medicaid, traditional Medicaid.
Yeah, at this point, it's demonstrably cheaper to do that.
Yeah, you bet. I like that.
I mean, to me, that's a solution moving forward. I mean, I know the governor yesterday said, no, we're going to stick with these work requirements and stick with giving Blue Cross Blue Shield $600 a month per person, But I mean, honestly, at this point, financially speaking, it makes way more sense to just keep expanded Medicaid and do it fee for service into the traditional pool because it's way cheaper. We're talking with Senator Scott Flippo. Now let's talk about this week. Now, this was a big deal, a much bigger deal. I know everyone talks about how a resolution is non-binding, but the reason this was such a big deal is for 5 years, grassroots activists, Scott, have been saying that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, that you don't need a permit to carry open or concealed, and you decided to run a resolution in the Senate clarifying a circuit court decision. Tell us about that.
So I visited with Representative Brant Smith out of Jonesboro a few months ago, and I told him, I said, listen, if you have if you want to move forward with this resolution and you have trouble with a Senate sponsor, you call me and let me know, and I'll be more than happy to run it for you. So 2 or 3 weeks later, Brant calls me and asked me if I would be willing to run it in the Senate. I said, of course. Here's the thing, Paul. Rights are important. Exercising those rights are important because if you do not exercise your rights, you lose your rights. Not everybody in Arkansas is going to open carry. The vast majority are not. However, it is important for people to know that we are a constitutional carry state, which means you have the right to carry open or concealed without a permit. And there has been a lot of confusion over that. I mean, we have been an open carry state for a number of years now. The problem is that there's still, a lot of pockets of our state and a lot of folks, in law enforcement and other areas of government that don't understand that or realize that yet. So we need to educate people. And so last year there was an appeals court ruling. I believe it was Taft versus Arkansas.
Taft
versus Arkansas. And what the appeals court ruled was that essentially they just clarified that indeed we are a constitutional carry state and you do have the right to carry openly or concealed without a permit. Now, this resolution is just showing that this General Assembly concurs with that ruling. We are in agreement. The governor has already come out and said we're an open carry state. The Attorney General has come out and said we're an open carry state. And I thought it was important for this General Assembly to go out and reiterate that as well.
Well, I'm really glad that you did. And, you mentioned the Attorney General. She did, in response to former Senator Linda Collins Smith's letter, Scott, asking if there was an actual penalty for carrying a weapon concealed without a concealed handgun. She said there is none. But then she urged, because Act 746 of 2013, people still are confused about it. Although this resolution that you just passed, Scott, it really helps with that confusion, makes it clear.
And it's sad, Paul, that people are still confused about it.
Yeah.
Because I've read it. I know you've read it. Everybody down here in Little Rapids has read it. I don't believe there's any confusion on anybody that I talk to's part as far as what it allows for.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, she did say she encouraged you guys in the legislature in her last opinion on this I think it's
to come back and clarify.
To clarify. And the title of the resolution is to clarify gun rights. And so
to clarify gun rights. I don't know how we could be more specific than that.
Yes. So
I was glad, it was no major opposition in the Senate other than what you would expect, which was some liberal Democrats. But it's something that all Republicans are kind of on the same page on. We're all in agreement. And I think it's important that we go out and speak with one voice on that. Again, you cannot quantify how important, not just your right to bear arms, but any right that you have, and the importance of it, and the importance for people to be able to exercise it.
Yeah.
Because when people exercise their rights, they don't just benefit them, they collectively benefit all of us.
I completely agree with that. Senator Scott Flippo, it's always great to have you on, sir. I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you running that resolution. I don't appreciate that first vote we talked about.
But and I appreciate that. And, Paul, I can tell you, you're not the only one, I can assure you.
Well, you have a good weekend, Scott.
Listen, you do the same. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. It's always great to have you on. Folks, we're going to reset here, come back, and we're going to listen to Governor Asa Hutchinson's press conference yesterday where he said that they're going to appeal the Arkansas Works court decision that struck down the work requirements. But as of right now, there are no work requirements. There's no portal on the internet to submit your work or your exemptions. That's what most people are doing. They're like, I'm volunteering for this organization, and that counts, right? Oh, I'm in school. I don't have to have work. I get my free insurance anyway. All that's gone now, and so will the program now balloon up to 330,000 again? I mean, at this point, listen, we can't afford it without the work requirements. We know we can't. We know I can. I don't think we can afford it with. You know how I know we can't afford Arkansas Works with the work requirements? Because they have a highway plan that they want to raise $400 million from us. They have an internet sales tax bill that's going to raise another $150 to $200 million from us, right? They have a 911 bill that is going to raise $16 million from us. And I am leaving tax increases out right now. Like, there are tax increases I'm leaving out. Now, they did cut your income tax $95 million in 2 years, but they got the gas tax increase. That's going to start. That's another $95 million. Oh, that's actually in with the $415 I mentioned earlier, but they're going to start collecting that in October. I mean, they're going to start collecting online sales tax when they get that through in July. I'm telling you, folks, it is we don't have the money to pay for Medicaid expansion now. And now these numbers are going to get even bigger because everybody's going to come back on the program. If you're Blue Cross Blue Shield right now, you're contacting everybody who's been kicked off their plan in the last year, and you're telling them, hey, you want to sign back up? I bet you $1 million. It's money. It's free money to them. I bet you $1 million people at Blue Cross Blue Shield are calling everybody today, are calling everybody with good news. Good news. You lost your insurance because you failed to work. But we can sign you right back up because you qualify again. I promise you that is happening as we speak. We're going to take a break. Back in a minute.
Value and after that Cash for Clunkers fiasco, well, we suffered a lot of appreciation, but inflation, a lot of inflation in the cheap used car market, and so it really takes $7,000 or $7,500, to get a good, dependable ride. And I think people trying to get on their feet and get a new job or whatever, they need dependable transportation.
Absolutely. Again, we're talking with State Representative John Payton. This is a great piece of legislation. You need to call your senators because this is with 83 co-sponsors in the House. This is going to sail through. You need to call your senators and you need to tell them, hey, we want you to pass this piece of legislation. We know it's going to cost $12 million. We can absorb that. Now, on that note, Representative Payton, when it came to the highway funding bill, there were tax increases, straight up or down tax increases that raised the cost of gas at the pump for the people, as well as referring a constitutional amendment to keep a half-cent sales tax that's set to expire. Now, you went to the floor, I believe, to speak against it, and you just basically said, we don't need to be doing this because we've had $500 million of revenue growth in a very short amount of time, and we could just use the increase in revenue that we're already getting from the people to pay for our roads. But that kind of fell on deaf ears, didn't it?
It did, and of course, like I said, I got elected in 2013, and there was a proposal that year by John. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on his last name. But anyway,
Jonathan Barnett. You're talking about Jonathan Barnett?
Yeah, Jonathan Barnett.
Yep.
And so that proposal would have taken revenue growth and put it to the highways, and now 6 years later, that problem would have been solved because we've had the revenue growth that would have taken care of the highways. But it was rejected, and I was just trying to make the point using these same numbers about revenue growth. We do not need new taxes. We just need to prioritize the money that we're getting in, and we don't even have to take any money away from anything. Just divert the revenue growth. So, it's been averaging for the last 8 years over $100 million a year in revenue growth that could have been all diverted to highways.
Do you think that it's because, like you said, in this case, in this scenario, you wouldn't even have to take any revenue from anywhere. You could just do it with the growth in revenue from the people that's just naturally coming in because of,
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
The economy. Do you think, though, that there are places? I mean, right now, I think it's interesting that, there hasn't really been anything proposed about maybe cutting 1% from each, agency. Is that true? Is there really nowhere in state government? Are we really expected to believe there's nowhere where there's fat to be trimmed?
I just cannot believe that anybody believes that. There are some people that argue it, but anybody that has run a business or a budget, you pretty much know that you have some luxuries in there that you could trim to achieve 1% or more, and then the bigger the budget is, the more opportunity you probably have to find that, and so obviously I believe there are efficiencies that could be found. It takes desire to do that. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, the desire to be friendly and not make waves overrides the desire to cut those budgets. So
I got one more question, and I know we weren't scheduled to talk about this, but I did text you privately about it. Charles Blake has this bill that would, redesignate one star on the Arkansas flag from the Confederacy to Native American tribes, I think. I got a tweet I'm looking at from Jesse Tenur that Charles Blake added bipartisan co-sponsors. Republican Jimmy Gasway and Senator Breann Davis now on board with this plan to redesignate the
and what little time
star.
We have left. This is Governor Asa Hutchinson yesterday in the wake of his signature Arkansas Works, his signature achievement, which is renaming a program everyone hated and lost power because of. Listen to this.
As you know, yesterday we received the D.C. Court ruling from Judge Boasberg. The ruling came yesterday. I reviewed it last night. Moments ago, I had a conversation with Deputy Secretary Hargan of the DHS in Washington, as well as his general counsel and other attorneys who have been involved in this case. We've communicated with the Attorney General's office in Arkansas as well. And I just met with the Senate and House leadership on this. As you know, Arkansas has been on the leading edge of a work requirement for those on expanded Medicaid.
Get rid of that guy.
We have been on the leading edge, and we were the first state to implement this waiver. And since we implemented the waiver, many states have followed this lead and have requested waivers, and other waivers are in the pipeline. And whenever you lead on a particular issue, particularly nationally, you have to overcome some obstacles. And we received an obstacle yesterday in the court's decision. The judge's ruling made a couple of points that should be emphasized today. First of all, Judge Boasberg did not strike down the work requirement based
Nelson
upon
Mandela's funeral,
the reporting elements.
It was a fraud sign language guy.
That has created significant controversy here in Arkansas and media attention over the last 6 months. He did not strike it down based upon any of the reporting requirements. He did not reach that question because he had a fundamental disagreement with the work requirement in and of itself. His view is that Medicaid is an entitlement program, and you cannot place additional
and you can never take it away because
that may
it's
lead
here to stay.
To a loss of coverage. That is his fundamental belief that goes through his previous opinion as well as this opinion. I contend that Judge Boasberg is wrong, and I'm urging the Department of Justice and Secretary Azar to appeal the ruling and to seek an expedited appeal of the district court's decision. And again,
it's likely that another judge will find nothing wrong
moments
with it.
Ago.
They could reverse the ruling
Judge
pretty easily.
Boasberg also pointed out that this could be a pause. He used that language in his opinion. In other words, he recognizes the likelihood of an appeal and that this could be changed, and so he referred that this could be a
Doesn't
pause.
President Trump want the entire Obamacare to go away?
Point, but it is important to emphasize today that I remain fully committed to a work requirement, and we are in this for the long haul because we believe it is the right policy for Arkansans who want to work and need more training and more opportunity.
All right, there you go.
I should add that
Governor
President
Asa
Trump
Hutchinson.
and his
Governor Asa Hutchinson basically, doubling down. He wants Arkansas to keep going with Medicaid expansion, but he wants the work requirement. Listen, we can't afford it with or without. It doesn't matter. They're going to continue to raise taxes. There will come a day where the consensus will be that in 2013 we set this state on course for fiscal disaster. That will one day be the objective consensus by everybody. You just wait and see. It will at one point happen. Folks, this headline was interesting. We had a headline, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, about Warren Stevens, okay? Very, very wealthy guy. Very, very successful guy. And there was an economic group that honored Warren Stevens. They're making this effort to try to educate people on capitalism and the benefits of capitalism. In this realm of, socialism. I wonder how many people in that room have voted for Democrats at this luncheon before. Anyway, who was in the room? Randy Zook, Randy Zook quoted as saying, we need to make sure that young people understand and realize the benefits and success of the capitalist system rather than a government-directed economic system. By the way, the Chamber of Commerce, that's all they are, is a government-directed economic system, and that's the organization he heads. Quote, they just don't work. We have the highest standard of living in a capitalist country. Anyway, Randy Zook, I don't think Randy Zook knows what capitalism is. He also doesn't know about education much. So
because I've been up here in the legislature when folks were rattling around and screaming bloody murder, and I can't help my kid with their homework. Well, they shouldn't be helping their kid with the homework in the first place.
Arkansas.
That's the teacher's job.
Arkansas, have a great weekend.
Opinion.
We'll see you Monday.